G'day web surfers, I'm Kabbaway, and today I want to talk a little bit about the new game that's just been announced, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Now, because I'm a bit of a night owl, I did catch the initial reveal of this game at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I had nothing better to do. So apparently this game is set 100 years prior to the events of Breath of the Wild, making it a prequel. And by the looks of it, it's going to explain what happened in the lead up to the Calamity. Upon finding out about this new game that they're creating, I have mixed feelings. Because, controversial opinion here, but I didn't really like Breath of the Wild all that much. Like, Breath of the Wild isn't a bad game at all. It's got great graphics. There's a lot of options for game control. You get to do pretty much anything you want. But it just didn't really feel like a Zelda game to me. I couldn't get immersed in the world because there just wasn't that much substance there. The story was very minimal, and what little story was there was really confusing and disjointed. It's like, I'm meant to feel bad about these characters who died like 100 years ago, but you're not giving me enough development to really warrant that. Breath of the Wild feels like Nintendo had so much to prove. It's like they're almost ashamed of their kiddie niche image that they've created, and they just wanted to be like, we can be equals with the big guys too. So they tried to make something that emulates like Skyrim and Assassin's Creed. So they tried to make something that appeals to more mainstream audiences. I mean it worked, but it just kind of lost Zelda's nice little niche thingy. I'm very bad at explaining myself here. But yeah, Breath of the Wild didn't stand out to me because it just felt too mainstream. And ironically, in its attempt to be mainstream, in the process they also didn't even do that great a job of trying to emulate the more mainstream stuff. There just wasn't enough to do. The story was very convoluted. The dungeon and boss designs were freaking repetitive. The enemies were kind of uninspired, most of them. There were a couple of exceptions, but there's plenty of articles and video essays from new players and longtime Zelda fans alike, so you can check those out. So, obviously, when I heard this new game was coming out, I kind of had mixed feelings because it's like, well, Breath of the Wild kind of made me not really interested in the direction Zelda was going. Because, call me biased, but I still prefer the niche. I still prefer the little niche games that Zelda has become known for. Why do you think they keep remaking all those older games? Because they're classics. The series wouldn't have lasted this long if people got tired of that formula. And that's the thing. Lots of niche games become franchises that endure for decades because they're different from everyone else. As long as you shake up the formula just enough to keep things interesting, then you can go really far with a niche. Whereas I feel like Zelda's kind of taking the easy way out and just trying to grab as many people as possible and just basically saying fuck you to its history. It just feels like Nintendo's trying to overcompensate for its kiddie niche reputation. And I think Breath of the Wild makes that painfully clear. So, seeing this game, part of me feels really indifferent. It's like, I don't care about Breath of the Wild. It just felt like a really overrated game. So I'm just like, why should I care about this one? But then another part of me is like, well, there is the premise that this will provide more backstory to the game itself, which could help it all make sense. But then I also think, well, they should have done a better job of developing that in the first place instead of relying on giving us stuff in retrospect. Because that's kind of bad story writing right there, but I mean, I don't know. Should I be excited for this game? Should I give it a chance? It is very hard to say because, again, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of where Nintendo is taking Zelda. Because it just feels like they're just desperate to stay relevant, so they're just using the Zelda name to get noticed. And it just kind of feels like they're just... Now that Breath of the Wild is one of the most popular games they've ever had, it's like they're almost just completely forgetting about Zelda's origins and what Zelda was meant to be about, and how it always had that unique blend of exploration, puzzles in the dungeons, the bosses, and Zelda games don't necessarily have a very complex story, but they always made it quirky and interesting, and the characters always had this sort of charm to them, even if they weren't always depicted as very deep. So, what do I feel about this new game that's coming out? Kind of mixed feelings. I don't really know what to think about it yet, but it has got me curious. I'm kind of curious about where they're taking it, even though I think they should have had something like this in Breath of the Wild itself. Kind of like an Ocarina of Time, where you experience the world before Ganondorf takes over, and then you experience it afterwards, so you actually witness the destruction for yourself. And it gives you more motivation and more urgency to restore Hyrule to its former glory. Whereas I didn't get that in Breath of the Wild because it's just so detached. Because you're so detached from the past. I could talk all day about why I don't like Breath of the Wild. But with this new game, it's like, should I give it a chance and reevaluate how I feel about Breath of the Wild? To put things into perspective, where did I put Breath of the Wild? In the meh section. I put it in meh because it wasn't as bad as Triforce Heroes because, you know, fuck that game. I'll chuck it into Death Mountain. If you think I should give Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity a chance and play it and possibly reevaluate my opinions on Breath of the Wild, please leave a comment below because I'm seriously stumped on this. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll catch you all later. Bye!